Gentle James, just a bit, I said, my voice shaking softly like a breeze slipping through the tiniest crack in a door. Each word seemed like a battle. My throat tightens, as if holding back something about to break out. My heart raced against my chest, pounding so ferociously that it felt like it may explode. I grasped the edge of the blanket tightly, my breathing becoming uneven, ragged, and shallow. Every slight sound in the quiet room made my heart jump, fearful that this precious moment would be discovered. Hello, everyone. I'm Sophia. Today, I'll relate my story, which I thought I'd keep hidden forever, never daring to speak about it. The painful truth is that the person to blame in this scenario is me. It's a story that seems too surreal to be true, something out of a film, but it happened in my life. No matter how hard I tried to erase it, the memory remains etched in my heart, haunting me day after day. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever be able to make amends and seek forgiveness from the person I hurt so deeply. The damage I caused was more than just emotional. It left a wound in trust that may never heal, and no matter how hard I try to forget, I can't erase the past. I am a young woman living in Carmel. By the sea is a calm and picturesque village on the California coast that feels as timeless as the ocean. My father, James, runs a beloved seafood restaurant in town. He's someone who takes good care of himself, goes to the gym regularly, and even though he's close to 50, he's kept a toned, strong physique that makes him look years younger. He's a man of strength and determination, but there's always been a gentleness when it comes to me. My mother, Nina, is a high school literature teacher. She's graceful, kind, and deeply passionate about classic literature. Every evening she sits by the window with a book in hand. Her face lit by the soft glow of the lamp, she has always shared her wisdom with me, teaching me to live authentically, to experience and express my emotions openly from my earliest memories. I was surrounded by their love. My parents dedicated themselves to raising me, protecting me from every shadow as a child. When my parents dedicated themselves to raising me and protecting me from every shadow as a child, when my father returned home from work, I'd rush to him, throwing myself into his arms and clinging to him as he lifted me off the ground. He was my entire world. Just being in his arms made everything feel right. Back then, I never questioned it. It was just the feeling of safety and love. I was a free-spirited girl drawn to beauty and all things colorful, adoring pretty dresses. Every time I twirl around for my parents, I'd eagerly wait for their proud smiles. Their simple compliments made me feel like the happiest girl in the world. After dinner each night, when we gathered in the living room, my habit was to curl up on my father's lap, feeling safe and warm in his embrace. It was a cherished routine, a bond one never wanted to let go of. Even as I grew older, I kept this habit, wanting to hold on to that sense of security he provided. It was my little slice of joy, a connection I couldn't imagine changing. But recently, whenever I sat close to him or hugged him, there was a change, a subtle shift I couldn't ignore. He no longer embraced me with the same natural ease. Sometimes he hesitated. His hold felt just a little tighter than before, and his gaze wasn't just the soft warmth of a father's love anymore. Occasionally, I didn't entirely understand, but I assured myself it was nothing but a fleeting notion, a product of my imagination. However, no matter how I tried to brush it aside, the feeling lingered, a whisper that things weren't as they once were. As I described, James keeps himself in terrific shape. Despite his age, he maintains a body that is powerful and athletic. He's not just my father, but a symbol of strength and confidence. I've always adored him when I saw him, his broad shoulders, his tall, robust frame. I can't deny he's a striking man, handsome in a way that commands attention whenever he passes by. I feel a warmth, a sensation I can't quite name. Perhaps it's admiration, but recently that feeling has shifted ever so slightly to something different that I can't quite define. Let me know if this aligns with your vision for part 1, or if you'd like further adjustments before proceeding to part 2. Felt different. It wasn't the simple admiration a daughter has for her father, a vague and unexplainable feeling that left me unsettled. Sometimes I caught myself watching him longer than usual, and whenever I was close to him, something stirred within me that felt strangely unfamiliar. One day, like any other, I came home from school, and Mark was already there. He always arrived before my mother, usually relaxing on the sofa with his eyes on the TV screen. As soon as I walked in, I saw him there, so peaceful, so familiar. Without a second thought, despite my age, I told myself it was simply my imagination, an odd concept that would pass. But it wasn't just a transient notion. I started to notice something pressing against me, something that made me uneasy at first. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was just the awkward position or maybe something in his pocket, but the longer I sat there, the more undeniable it became. My heart began to race. The air around us grew thick, suffocating, and a wave of discomfort washed over me, and I felt awkward, unsure of what to do. The closeness that had once felt so comforting now left me feeling exposed and nervous. Mark didn't say a word. He just looked at me with a gaze I no longer knew. When Mom walked in, the atmosphere transformed instantly. I quickly glanced away and stood up with a smile like everything was normal, but that peculiar feeling stuck to me. Weighing on my heart was something that couldn't easily be returned to the way it had been. Outwardly, everything appeared to be the same, but something had changed on the inside. Mark began paying more attention to me, asking about my day and noticing nuances about my life that he had never asked about before. He even started giving me new clothes and tiny presents that seemed random yet frequent. At first, I was perplexed by these gifts, but gradually I couldn't shake the feeling that his attention was no longer simply fatherly. Every time he looked at me, with each thoughtful gesture, I felt a strange sense of closeness, as if the space between us wasn't what it used to be, a shift that was more than just physical. His gaze lingered a little too long. Our silences stretched a little further, and I sensed the subtle changes between us, but I didn't know how to confront it. The dining table was elegantly set, more elaborate than I had ever seen, and the atmosphere felt different. The beautiful glow of the candlelight produced a warm, almost romantic across the room. Dishes of excellent food decorated the table. 2 bottles of red wine stood between us. I couldn't help but laugh in surprise, my eyes wide as I looked at Mark with a smile. "Why all this?" I asked, amused but unsuspecting. He explained, smiling, that he'd received good news at work and thought it was the perfect occasion to celebrate. His smile was reassuring, and I felt my own excitement rise, just eager to share a nice dinner with him. We settled at the table, eating and talking, the wine flowing freely. The soft candlelight cast a cozy warmth that made everything feel more intimate than ever. In that moment, I felt nothing out of place. Everything seemed perfectly familiar, yet as the evening wore on, the closeness between us took on a different tone, a feeling I couldn't put a name to. We laughed and reminisced, sharing stories from my childhood, old jokes, and sweet memories that made us laugh, as if all the tension had melted away into laughter. The warmth in the room felt like a comforting embrace, and I found myself savoring the closeness, letting myself fall into the nostalgia of it all. By the time we finished the second bottle of wine, I felt a warm, hazy dizziness set in. My mind was clouded, my thoughts drifting. The dimly lit bar with its hazy atmosphere and the clinking of glasses seemed to amplify the pounding in my chest. My voice was barely a whisper, but it hung heavily in the air between us, packed with a meaning that surpassed the typical devotion between father and son. He turned to me. His eyes, which were typically filled with love and reassurance, now showed a flicker of astonishment, swiftly followed by an intense scrutiny that appeared to cut through my facade. A pregnant stillness stretched between us, each second feeling like an eternity. "Yes," he eventually responded, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down my spine. The single word with hidden feelings broke. The fragile barrier between us revealed a connection that defied definition. An inexplicable urge overcame me, a need for closeness that I could no longer deny. I reached out my hand, trembling slightly, and gently touched his cheek. He leaned into my touch, his eyes fluttering closed as if savoring the unexpected contact. Driven by an impulse I couldn't explain, I leaned in and kissed him. It was a tentative touch at first, a featherlight brush of lips against lips, but it ignited a fire. Years of suppressed need and unleashing a torrent of feelings I had kept buried deep inside. He responded with a fury that matched mine. his arms enveloping my waist and bringing me closer until there was no room left between us. The kiss intensified into a frenzied exploration of forbidden terrain, a nonverbal admission of the unsaid passions that had simmered between us for far too long. My heart hammered against my ribs, the rhythm echoing the frantic beating of his own heart against my chest. His hands moved to my back, caressing me with a tenderness that belied the intensity of our embrace. He traced the lines of my spine, his touch sending waves of heat through my body. He stood up, pulling me with him, and led me to a secluded corner of the bar away from prying eyes. There in the dim light, he kissed me again. His hands explored my body with newfound audacity. I shivered under his touch, every nerve ending alive with sensation. He lifted me onto a nearby table, our legs entwining as we clung to each other. His touch became more insistent, his fingers unbuttoning my shirt, revealing the skin beneath. I felt a wave of vulnerability wash over me, but it was quickly replaced by an overwhelming sense of surrender. We made love there in the shadows, our bodies moving in a silent dance of passion and desperation. Each touch, each kiss was a rebbe. As we lay entwined, our breathing gradually returning to normal, a profound sense of peace settled over me. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen and understood. The weight of our transgression was undeniable, but it felt insignificant in comparison to the overwhelming power of our connection. The next morning, the harsh light of day brought with a renewed sense of dread and anxiety. We parted ways and returned to our own lives, but the memory of the night before stayed like a secret fire blazing within us. Our furtive rendezvous continued, each one a risky dance on the edge of a precipice. We knew we were playing with fire, risking everything for a love that society judged immoral, but the pull of our forbidden passion was too great to resist, tearing me apart. I loved my mother, but I couldn't ignore the undeniable bond one shared with my father. We were stuck in a web of our own devising, locked between the need for acceptance and the dread of exposure. One evening, as we sat at the dinner table, the tension between us crackled. My mother, with her intuition enhanced by years of unsaid facts, eventually addressed us. Her voice wavering with mistrust, the truth spilled out of me, a torrent of words that I could no longer contain. My father's face pale but steadfastly verified my confession. The revelation wrecked our family, leaving us damaged and exposed. Yet within the devastation, a new path formed. We had crossed a boundary that defied convention and discovered a love that surpassed the confines of conventional expectations. The future was uncertain, and the road ahead was laden with problems, but we confronted them together. Bound by a love that refused to be denied, my skin tingled under his gaze, and every nerve ending was aware of his proximity. He lifted me as if I weighed nothing, his muscular arms a cozy prison. I clutched him, burying my face in his neck, inhaling the scent of his skin, a mix of familiar comfort and forbidden desire. Our breaths mingled, each inhaling and exhaling a shared symphony of escalating passion. He carried me through the dimly lit house, the shadows dancing around us like silent conspirators. The world outside ceased to exist. Time became meaningless. There was only this moment, this intense connection, a silent understanding that transcended words. He carefully placed me down on the bed, his eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my pulse flutter. Our lips touched again. The kiss was the conclusion of hidden wishes, a release of pent-up longing. It was a dance of passion and tenderness, a desperate attempt to merge our spirits into one. I felt his hot breath on my skin. The quick pounding of his heart mirrored the frantic rhythm of my own, and his hands moved with a trained grace, carefully unbuttoning my shirt, each touch sending a thrill of anticipation through me. With each layer of clothing lost, a sense of vulnerability swept over me. It wasn't just the physical nakedness, but the emotional exposure, the baring of our souls, that made my breath hitch. But with each passing moment, the fear and hesitancy melted away, replaced by an all-consuming sense of surrender. That night, we shattered all boundaries. We were no longer father and son, but two souls intertwined, two hearts beating in unison. Every touch and caress was a silent vow. In a desperate attempt to etch ourselves onto each other's very being, We gave each other everything. Not just the physical intimacy that had been denied for so long, but the raw, unfiltered emotions that had been simmering beneath the surface. We poured our hearts out, confessing the secret desires and unspoken fears that had haunted us for years in the aftermath of our passion. As we lay tangled in the sheets, a sense of completeness washed over me. It was as if we had found the missing piece of ourselves in each other, a connection that defied all logic and cultural norms. The next morning, with the arrival of dawn and the restoration of reality, we resumed our roles. The mask of normality was a dramatic contrast to the violent emotions that raged within us. Yet something had irreversibly altered. A quiet understanding lingered in the air, a shared secret that tied us together. Every glance and touch bore a new meaning, a hidden language that only we could comprehend. We knew it was wrong, a transgression against the sacred bond of family, yet we couldn't deny the powerful connection we had found. Our meetings became clandestine, stolen moments of passion amidst the chaos of our everyday lives. The conflict between guilt and desire raged within me, a constant battle between what I knew to be right and the undeniable yearning of my heart. We were living a lie, a dangerous game that threatened to destroy everything we held dear, but in those stolen moments when we were bound by a forbidden yearning, permanently bound in the delicate balance of love and sin, the unsaid pact weighed heavily in the air between us. Every fleeting glimpse and lingering touch strengthened our dedication to this forbidden road. We were bound by an invisible thread fashioned from desire and defiance. One night, with my mother away on a religious retreat, the silence in the home weighed in on me. I was in bed, drifting in a sea of dreams, when a small change in the mattress woke me from my slumber. I opened my eyes to discover my father alongside me. His familiar body was a soothing presence in the darkness. His arm was draped over my waist, drawing me closer, his warmth enveloping me like a cherished blanket. A jolt of surprise shot through me, but it quickly gave way to a sweet surrender. I turned towards him, a soft smile gracing my lips. In that moment, the weight of our secret, the fear of discovery, faded away, leaving only the comforting reality of his presence. "Dad," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Be careful." Mom wouldn't understand my words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken anxieties. Each syllable felt like a betrayal, a reminder of the precarious tightrope we were walking. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the night. I clung to him, my fingers digging into the fabric of his shirt, seeking an anchor in the storm of my emotions. The room was eerily still. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the sheets amplified in the quiet darkness. The fear of discovery had become a constant companion, a shadow lurking in the corners of our stolen moments, but despite the ever-present danger, I couldn't bring myself to end it. I was trapped in the intoxicating allure of our forbidden love, unable to resist the pull of his embrace. Then one day the inevitable happened. My mother called, her voice laced with regret, informing us that she wouldn't be returning home that night. A wave of relief, reckless, even deluded by the idea of safety. Fate seemed to have different intentions. The front door creaked open, breaking the pleasant silence. My mother stood in the doorway, her eyes wide with astonishment and amazement. The scene before her, her husband and son wrapped in a compromising embrace, was a terrible betrayal of her trust and a crushing confirmation of her darkest fears. Time seemed to freeze. The air thickened with whispered accusations and broken dreams. My mother's silence was more deafening than any scream in that moment. I knew that our secret was out. Our forbidden love was exposed to the harsh light of day. The fragile world we had built came crashing down. Down around us, leaving us to face the devastating consequences of our actions. The weight of our secret hung between us, an unspoken promise woven into every stolen glance and lingering touch. We were addicted to the thrill of the forbidden fruit of our twisted desire. We knew it was wrong, a dangerous game with devastating consequences, but neither of us dared to speak of stopping one night with the house shrouded in an eerie silence, my mother away on a spiritual journey. I put out my fingers and traced the lines of his face, imprinting his features in my memory. "Dad," I whispered, my voice trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. What if Mom comes back? He hushed me with a gentle kiss on his lips, silencing my worries. She won't, he murmured, his voice a soothing balm against my anxieties. We have tonight just the two of us. But even in the darkness, the fear of discovery lingered, a constant shadow cast over our stolen moments. It was a thrilling, terrifying dance on the edge of a precipice, and I was both terrified and exhilarated by the fall. The fragile peace we had constructed, my mother's voice strained and apologetic, informed us that she wouldn't be returning home as planned. A surge of relief followed by a wave of guilt washed over me that night. We abandoned all caution, our passion fueled by the illusion of safety. We were lost in our own world, oblivious to the impending storm. The piercing click of the front door latch interrupted the silence. Like a knife, my mother remained still in the doorway, her eyes widening in horror as she took in the scene before her. The world appeared to shift on its axis. My breath seized in my throat, and my heart pounded against my ribs like a caged bird. My father's face drained of color, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and sadness, and the stillness that followed was deafening. My mother's eyes flickered between us. Her stare was filled with betrayal, hurt, and disbelief. The air bristled with unsaid accusations, the weight of our violation crushing us all without a word. She turned and departed, leaving us alone in the debris of our shattered family. The house, once a sanctuary of warmth and laughter, now felt cold and empty, a tomb of broken trust and shattered dreams. The following days were a torment. My mother didn't return, her absence a constant reminder of the pain we had caused. The divorce papers arrived, a formal declaration of the end of a love I had once believed unbreakable. I was lost, adrift in a sea of guilt and regret. The foundation of my world had crumbled, leaving me to face the consequences of my actions. My father, once my pillar of strength, was now a source of shame and sorrow. The pain of my betrayal cut deep, leaving an unfillable void in my mother's heart. I had destroyed the family I loved, all for the sake of a forbidden desire. Now I stand at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. The future stretches before me, uncertain and bleak. I have lost the love and trust of both my parents, and the guilt of my actions weighs heavily on my soul. And I know that I will forever bear the scars of this experience, a constant reminder of the devastating consequences of my choices. But I also know that I must find a way to move forward, to learn from my mistakes, and to somehow rebuild my life. From the ashes of my history, the raw agony in her eyes reflected the shattering of my own heart. At that moment, the universe fell around us, the weight of our sin crushing us all. I felt trapped, unable to talk, apologize, or explain. My father, he stood behind me, equally dumbfounded, his face engraved with a deep guilt that mirrored my own. The air crackled with tension, the stillness deafening, and there was no place for excuses or forgiveness. My mother did not say anything. She simply turned and walked away, leaving behind an emptiness that could never be filled. The house became a tomb. The silence was awful. Every corner had a memory. Each shadow whispered accusations. We were strangers in our own home. The closeness we had shared now a twisted farce of the love we had destroyed. Days became weeks, and the silence stretched into an eternity. My mother did not return, and eventually the divorce papers arrived, a stark reminder of the permanent devastation we had inflicted. The house grew cold and empty, a shell of its former self. I was left to wander its hollow halls haunted by the ghosts of our shattered family, lost and alone. I was torn between my parents. My father, once my hero, was now the source of my deepest shame. My mother, who had nurtured and loved me unconditionally, was now a stranger, her heart broken. Beyond repair, my selfish desires and my reckless pursuit of forbidden pleasure had led to this devastation. I had destroyed everything I held dear. The consequences of my actions extended far beyond my own pain. I had shattered the trust and love that had bound our family together, leaving scars that would never fully heal. Now, standing amidst the ruins of my life, I realized the importance of boundaries, the sanctity of family ties and love, no matter how intense, cannot justify the violence. This story serves as a warning, a cautionary story for those who might stray from the path of righteousness. Be vigilant and observe the boundaries that protect the integrity of family. Don't let ephemeral emotions cloud your judgment, and don't let weakness lead you down the path of regret. Thank you for listening. If my story touched your heart, please like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next phase of my journey as I traverse the long and grueling road to redemption.